Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of
the Happy Hippie Podcast.
I'm your host, Kylie Iris. And how is everybody doing today? I'm not sure if the microphone will be able to pick this up or not, but right now there's currently a thunder and lightning storm going on, and it's like pouring rain. So if that happens to catch on the microphone, I actually kind of like the rain. For me, I feel like it's kind of like ambiance, background music. But hey, just pretend you can't hear it, okay? Today is an exciting episode because today we're going to be talking about one of the most exciting time periods of my life so far. This is definitely one of the more hectic eras of my life. I briefly talked about van life on the first episode, and I got a lot of people asking me to go in full details. So this is definitely the episode for that. I'm going to talk all about van life, all about the transition from like living in Los Angeles to quitting all of that for a nomad life and kind of what that taught me and why I even did that in the first place. I'm going to talk about all that juicy stuff in this episode. Last week's episode was really heavy. For those of you who don't know, I'm predominantly a pretty positive person, so you know what? This episode is going to be the balance, okay? Last episode was really dark and deep and heavy, so it needs to be counteracted with some more lighthearted story times. So that's what this episode's all about. Grab your bucket of popcorn, folks. Okay, this is going to be a good one. This was a really exciting era of my life because it was also the first time I ever, took off from home and spread my wings. And I feel like your very first time moving out, it's just it really sticks with you. I moved to Los Angeles right after I was living in Costa Rica. And I'll never forget the flight there. The flying from Costa Rica to LA was crazy because it was my first time ever having a flight alone. And oh my gosh, what a main character experience it is to fly alone. There's something about having your headphones in at the airport, jamming in your favorite music, just walking around in the airport alone where it's wow, I'm the main character. And I remember that's what I felt like this time period of my life was definitely the period in which I discovered that I am the main character. And I think unlocking becoming the main character of your life is really, it's the plot. It truly is the character development. When you start living your life like you're the main character, everything changes. And moving to LA was really just the start of that. When I first flew out to LA from Costa Rica, because that's where I was living prior to during the pandemic, it was my first flight ever alone. So I was immediately terrified, but also excited because we stand the main character vibes, right? Long story short, my first time ever flying alone, Kylie happened to get the random security check. Yay! No. Not yay. They held me in this room for hours, and they didn't only go through every single piece of luggage, but they also went through my phone. They went through all my emails, my text messages. They made me unlock and open my bank account. They looked through that. I've never had such an invasion of privacy than I have at the LAX airport. I was so excited, okay? I was living my Hannah Montana dream, okay? Hopped at the plane of LAX, and I didn't have a dream of my cardigan. Instead, I almost had handcuffs behind my back because I'm a pretty little blonde girl flying alone, and apparently that's a red flag. I don't know. Also, my ADHD, sometimes I feel like I talk too fast. Do I talk too fast? I can't tell if people can keep up because I feel like my brain, it kind of works real quick, and sometimes I talk really quick, but I'm is this too fast for people? Should I slow down? I don't know, guys. Let me know. I lost my train of thought. ADHD and solo podcast. Love that for me. After that random security check, my best friend came to pick me up at the airport, and this was the person that I lived with in LA. He was my roommate. Big shout out to Gus Driscoll. He is actually one of the first members of my Soul Tribe family that I met, and I'll never forget the way we met. We met years back prior to I was visiting LA. And I was on the beach in Malibu, and that's actually how me and Gus met. And I'm a huge believer in soul contracts. So for those of you who don't know what that means, essentially the idea of soul contracts is prior to this lifetime, you sign contracts with certain individuals to meet in this lifetime to evolve your soul. And basically those kinds of connections are you know when you meet somebody and it's you literally just met them, but you feel like you've known them forever? That's usually because you either A, knew them in a past life, or B, maybe you have a soul contract with them and you were predestined to meet in this lifetime to evolve your soul. Anyways, that's the idea of a soul contract, right? So all of the members of my soul tribe family that I've met so far, I have met when I've been traveling. And Gus was actually one of the very first people of my soul tribe family that I've met. If I was to describe me and Gus's relationship, first of all, let's just talk about the zodiac signs here, okay? I'm a Libra. He is a Gemini. So you already know, we both are air signs. We're quick, witty, we get the big brain humor, and we just were like instantly two peas in a pod. Speaking of zodiac signs, if you guys love astrology, if you're into your zodiac, definitely go check out my shop, lunarloft.ca. You can shop for things like my custom created zodiac art prints. We also have zodiac crystal candles. We also have crystal bracelets. We have all kinds of fun, different stuff. If this sounds like something that might be of interest to you, you can use code happyhippie to save 15% off your order at lunarloft.ca. Once again, that was code happyhippie for 15% off at lunarloft.ca. Actually, the way we met, it was so weird. I was on the beach in Malibu, and he literally just came up to me and he started talking about how like this bird has one leg and it's really weird. The way we met was so random, but it's just so crazy how you can like literally meet a stranger in Malibu on a random trip, and then years later you end up just like moving in with him and becoming besties. Like, I love that for me. It was iconic. And we kind of just had the same sense of humor. So I think the majority of my time living in LA was literally spent crying, pissing myself of laughter, because there is no human being on this earth that can make me cry, piss of laughter the way that Gus Driscoll can. I'm not trying to be biased here, but I don't know, there's something about actors. They're just the best people. Every single actor I've met, whether on or off of set, they just always stick out to me. But I don't know, I just think actors are the best people. And me and Gus were both actors, so I think living together was so much fun because we would just constantly improv. Him and I would just embody random different characters and just take them on and be that character for the day. And I don't know, I just think that was so much fun. To a lot of people, this is probably weird, but to me, I'm a weird person, right? Normal people kind of scare me. And Gus is also kind of weird, so I feel like that's why we got along so well. But yeah, I remember one time we were heading to dinner in Malibu. We were going to Gladstone's. We just randomly picked up this like Lois and Peter Griffin hybrid Boston accent, and we just talked to each other like we were a married old couple in this accent for, I swear, 3 weeks straight. And to a lot of people that's probably weird, but like we were both actors, right? So we just had so much fun with it. Okay, I'll just like reenact it. So I'm gonna go back and forth between me and Gus. Okay, so we're in the car.
Sweetheart, I think we should get Gladstones for dinner.
And then I'd be like,
you want to spend your money on Gladstones? We could have used that for the kids' college fund.
And we would literally just go back and forth with the weirdest things. And oh my God, this I freaking love Geminis, man. They're just my favorite. Like, okay, pop off quick, witty, big brain humor. We love to see it. And we would do just like stupid improv like this back and forth for hours straight. Me and Gus have just been through so much funny things together, and he'll forever hold a special place in my heart. And so will living in LA. Like, that was such a fever dream. Los Angeles, might I just say, is such a fever dream. Like, it truly is such a bubble there. But it's a cool bubble to be in. It's like a colorful bubble, you know? Like, people can blow normal bubbles, but you know those bubbles that are like colorful with like a machine that makes them all cool? Like, that's LA. Not me literally using a bubble analogy. I'm so weird for that. Anyways, so basically LA was a fever dream. I think one of my favorite memories of living in LA was when me and Gus just impulsively drove to Vegas. It was like literally a Wednesday afternoon. I was like, we should go to Vegas. And he was like, yeah. And I was like,
Sweetheart, we should go to Vegas, huh?
we're literally both underage. And he's like, yeah. Because at the time he was 18 and I was 19 years old. So just picture two teenagers and we're like, road trip to Vegas. Like, we're both underage, but we didn't care. We wanted to dice roll on the Las Vegas Strip. So that's exactly what we did. I met this guy on the Strip who I literally thought was Tiger King, but it wasn't, because he's in jail apparently at the time. And I thought it was him, but it wasn't. Anyways, LA was the coolest time of my life. It really was. And for my career, living in LA was amazing. Like, I was getting so many acting gigs. I was having so many amazing opportunities kind of just laid out in front of me. It really was a dream come true. However, even at a young age, I understood the concept that discomfort equals growth. And I think what happened with living in LA is I just got to a point where I was really comfortable. Also, I had a massive Chick-fil-A addiction. Might I just say that? Gus and I sometimes would go 2 to 3 times per day to Chick-fil-A. And you guys think I'm joking when I say 2 to 3 times, but I genuinely mean that. My addiction was so bad. There actually came a point where Gus sat me down and he was kind of concerned for me. He's like, "Are you okay? Why do you want Chick-fil-A for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?" The problem is I have an addictive ass personality. And when I like something, I love it. And then I become obsessed with it. And then I'll eat it every single day for 3 months straight. And then I'll never eat it again. And that was Chick-fil-A. I still eat Chick-fil-A. I lied. But not as often. So, hey, progress. I literally just completely forgot what this entire episode was about. I love my ADHD for that. Right. LA. I've always had a really easy time making friends with guys. I've always kind of been one of the boys, which is trippy because I'm really girly looking, but I'm also very in tune with my masculine energy. So I think that's why, I don't know, I've just always had an easier time getting along with guys than girls. In LA, I obviously had a lot of guy friends, and I was like, okay, I really got to diversify my friend group here because all these males, I got to balance it out a little bit, So actually one of the first girlfriends I feel like I had in LA was actually PP Cocaine. So I was on set to do one of her music videos, and that's how I met her. And I remember she just invited me over for game night, and that was so trippy. So I walk into her penthouse, okay? There's a 40-foot stripper pole just in the middle of her living room. And I was just like, whoa. What is LA? Where do I sign up? I want to be here forever, I just feel like it was so iconic. It's just so LA to have a 40-foot stripper pole in the middle of your living room. And I just love that for her. I really did. She was sweet to me. I actually vividly remember first meeting her because I have a certain kind of energy around my aura that people pick up on very quickly, especially people into the occult and stuff like that. Right when I met her, the first thing that PP Cocaine did is she went upstairs into her room, she grabbed her pendulum, and she goes, "Spirit, can I trust her?" And she's figuring out if I'm trustworthy. She's talking with Spirit, and and obviously Spirit's yeah, she's cool. Lily was tripped out by me because she's like, "Why are you so nice?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Because this happened to me my entire time living in LA. Everyone was just confused on why I was so nice. And obviously whenever I told them I was Canadian, everyone's just like, "Oh." I don't know. I guess there's this whole stereotype that Canadians are really nice. And I guess we are. I think we are nice. Living in LA was so much fun. It really was a dream come true for me. Obviously with acting too, it's really just a great place to be in. I was getting so many gigs. I was getting consistent work, and I was doing really well. But I got to this point where I was kind of comfortable. I felt like there was a part of me that was missing. It was weird. I think my whole life, it was my biggest dream to live in LA, and I was finally got there, and obviously it was a dream come true, but there were just still felt like there was a part of something that was missing, and I couldn't quite wrap my finger on just what that was. I just felt a call to kind of just do something a little bit different than I was already doing. So that's what I did. I decided to go back home, and keep in mind this was during the pandemic, so I tested negative. I had 0 symptoms of any kind of sickness whatsoever, but I still had to quarantine inside of my room for 14 days straight. And my parents took that shit so seriously. They duct taped tarp over the doors, and I was locked inside of my room for 14 days, and I wasn't even sick. It actually frustrates me to think back at that time period and how everything was. I can't believe I spent months of my life literally in my room from quarantine. How ridiculous is that? When I wasn't even sick. The news was saying to do it, so everyone did it. Oh, actually, that reminds me. This was during the period in which the hotel quarantine was a thing. So basically in Canada, during this time period, whenever you traveled, you would have to quarantine in a hotel and pay $2,000. It was absolute BS. So what did your girl do? Because she knew all of the cough 19 was BS from the start. You want to know what I did? I actually flew to Buffalo, New York, and I just crossed the border. Like I walked across the border instead of flying directly into Toronto. And then, yeah, and that's how I avoided the 2-week quarantine and $2,000 at the hotel, in case anybody was wondering. So I got back home. I was in Canada. Instant depression. Okay, instant depression. You know, I was just living in Costa Rica, backpacking across the country with my friends. And then I was living in Los Angeles, California. And now I'm back here, Canada, Ontario, in the middle of winter. So what was your girl? She was depressed. Instant depression. And I just got like so depressed because after traveling for months and then you come back, you're like, wow, like, why am I here? And that's kind of like what I was experiencing. But then I was like, you know what, Kylie? You can't say you hate Canada when you live in the literal butthole of Canada. Ontario is the literal butthole of Canada, you know? It's like you can't say you hate Canada when this is where you're living. So what did your girl do? Well, she quarantined for 2 weeks inside of her room. And then on the 14th day, at the end of quarantine, I packed all my belongings up into my car. And because I decided it was time for a change and it was time for something different. Also, let's give a little bit of context to my car. At the time, I was driving a 2008 Kia Spectra that would maybe 50% of the time start. Okay? My car literally would barely turn on. And when I came back home after traveling, it was sitting in my driveway for months and months and months, right? So like the engine, it was just sitting there. It was my first day out of quarantine, and I went and I sat in my car. And I said, if by some grace of God, by some kind of miracle, if this car starts first try, I'm driving this thing 50 hours across the country. So I put the key in the ignition, okay? I turn it. The bitch started! The bitch started. And I was shocked by this. I didn't expect the car to start, but it did. So what did your girl do? Well, she packed up all of her belongings. Every single thing that I own, I packed into a box, and I put that inside of this car, and I proceeded to drive this car 50 hours across the country to relocate on a tiny little surfing village on an island in the middle of nowhere. This was the plot. This really was the plot. The problem was this was like prime pandemic, okay? So the country was kind of still like locked down and everything was still weird. 2 of my friends at the time were wanting to drive out and move out onto this little surfing village with a population of less than 1,000 people, quite literally in the middle of nowhere on this island. Okay, so 2 of my guy friends were wanting to move out there. So I was like, oh my God, like I want to move out there, you know? So I'm like online looking to rent a place. However, a lot of the land there is crown land, right? The land's pretty sacred and houses can't be like just built upon anywhere on the land because a lot of it's crown. Basically, they had a very limited amount of land available. The waiting list to rent to live anywhere on this tiny little surfing village was like, I think 2 to 3 years long. 2 to 3 year long wait list if I wanted to rent a place to live there. So I was so upset by that. I was like, oh my God, no, what am I going to do? But a lot of the people that live there, what they do is they live in staff accommodation houses. So essentially they get a job that has like a housing. The job that they have has like a staff accommodation house, and that's where they live. So that's what the people I was traveling across the country with at the time, that's what they were doing. So I was like at a crossroad, right? So I've been self-employed since I was 16. I haven't worked for anybody in years, right? So I kind of had to drop my ego a little bit because I really wanted to move out there. So I had to like get a normal job. I kind of knew I wasn't going to stick with it for a while. Like I just needed something to initially get out there to like have a place to live. This is also, I think, so funny, a nutshell in itself. So I got hired as like the housekeeping supervisor for this lodge, and they had a staff accommodation house. So that's where I decided to live when I first moved out there, right? This is also hilarious in itself because I've never done any form of housekeeping or had any housekeeping experience or supervising experience, but I got the job. And do you want to know how I got the job? Is because people don't realize communication is such an important skill. And once you learn how to master your communication skills, oh my gosh, you can get anything in life. So I was so excited when I got the job. And this is when I packed up my car and drove 50 hours across the country. I drove across the country with Matt and Braden Booth. And these two people, I honestly view them as my brothers. Like, I have so much love in my heart for these two beautiful souls. They're also such extremely talented photographers. So if any of you guys are interested in surf photography or anything travel related, definitely go check out Matt and Braden Booth. These boys are literally my brothers. I've been on some of the funnest adventures of my life with these guys. They both hold such a special place in my heart. So I packed up my car, Matt has his car, and together, me, Matt, and Braden all drove across the country in the matter of a week. And that was such a beautiful experience, being able to see each province and just like see Canada as a whole, because I've lived here my whole life, but I really haven't explored much of it. I highly recommend a good 50-hour road trip. That shit was fun. So we drove from Ontario all the way out to British Columbia. We took the ferry across to Vancouver Island and then drove the furthest point west you can drive into this country, which led us to this tiny little surfing village with a population of less than 1,000 people. And this is where I spent the next year of my life. When I first moved out, I had that job, right? So I had a place to live with that staff accommodation house. Okay, I lived with 70 people. Yeah, you heard that right, folks. This staff accommodation fits 70 people. Basically, it was like a college frat house. A really giant college frat house is how I would describe that. It was kind of like a hotel. Like, everyone had their own rooms, but because I was a supervisor, I had a cabin, so I had my own little place to myself, which was nice, not having to share a kitchen and bathroom. This was also like when Outer Banks was really popping off during quarantine. So I just remember like wanting to live like a pogue so bad. And I was like craving this sense of freedom. And I don't know, living on this tiny little surfing village most certainly gave me that sense of freedom. If I were to describe this tiny little village in 2 words, it would be time machine. Okay, this place was a time machine. Everybody there was like stuck in the 60s and it was so cool. Everybody just had super, super old vintage cars. Everybody dressed like hippies. Everyone was either a skate bum or a surf bum. It was just, it was such a movie. It really was. And my first day at staff accommodation is when I met, yet again, another member of my Soul Tribe family, Summer Berube. My beautiful summer days. Summer's my best friend. And I'll never forget the first time we met because I was new, right? I didn't know anybody. I was so scared. I just moved out to this place. I didn't know a single person. I was living with 70 people and I didn't know anyone's name. But there was this cute little blonde girl with bangs and a septum piercing, and she seemed like a nice girl. So I walked up to her and I started talking to her. Mid-conversation, a pizza delivery guy like showed up, and I guess that was her pizza, and she did not care that we were having a conversation. Mid-conversation, she gets up and runs. She runs to go and get her pizza. The fact that she just was so excited about a box of pizza that she just like completely dropped every single thing that was happening in her brain to just indulge in that pizza. I just had so much respect for that. From living in LA, right, everyone was super materialistic. It was always like, oh, how many followers do you have? Like, let me look at your Instagram, your YouTube, your TikTok. Like, it was very much like, you know, that kind of social media life. But out on this village, it was like an uber rare occurrence if you saw somebody on a phone. Like, a lot of people were disconnected, right? They didn't know anything about social media. They don't care about social media. And I loved this because this was the first time in years where I just like met people and they saw me for who I was and not what I had. And that was really fucking important and special to me. It was literally a time machine. That's what it was. Like, it was a time machine. Everybody there was living in a completely different time period. And I think experiencing that was one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to experience in my lifetime so far. And I'm so extremely grateful for the time I spent in this village and all the beautiful souls I got to meet. It's kind of cool when you impulsively move 50 hours across the country and then you just happen to meet the coolest person, and that was Summer and me. Most of the people there didn't even have phones, let alone social media. Just getting the chance to have a raw form of human interaction felt really refreshing, especially after living in Los Angeles. I made so many friends, and nobody knew that I did social media or acting or any of that, and I loved that. It was so cool because people treated me like I was a person. They treated me like a normal human being and not like they wanted something from me. And that felt really, really nice and honestly refreshing. Another one of my favorite things about this island was there just wasn't really a beauty standard. Every single person kind of just wore what they want, had their own unique sense of style. No, there was no fashion trend. There was no this. Everyone was just so incredibly unique. And I just absolutely loved that. You know what it felt like? It was like all the weirdos, all the outcasts of every single town, all in a tiny little village together. That's what it felt like. It was one of the first times in my life I ever felt like I fit in. I felt like I actually fit in somewhere. And that was just such a beautiful feeling to experience, just feeling like I belonged, because I struggle with that a lot. It gave me so much faith in humanity. When I lived with these people, and what they were is hippies, right? All the people that lived out here were hippies. They were all free-spirited individuals who escaped the matrix, who don't live inside of the box that everybody else has been put in, and being able to just pick the minds of these kinds of people taught me so much. It really did. One of my first days living at Staffacom, and I'll never forget this. I was just taking a nap. I was in my cabin taking a nap, and this Australian man just barges into my room, and there's 15 people behind him. Okay, they circle around my bed, and he goes, "Kylie, welcome to the lodge. Are you ready to join the Get Weird party?" I just woke up mid-nap. Okay, I'm all confused. Why is this Australian man here talking to me? What's going on? I responded, and I was kind of just like, what? What's a Get Weird party? And he goes, "Kylie, we're having a party where we get weird. But the number one rule of the Get Weird party is you can't pick what you wear." And I was like, what do you mean? He walks over to my closet. Okay, doesn't even say a word to me. He's going through all my clothes. He's like, yeah, I can tell you're from the city. He's going through all my clothes. So he takes my laundry bag. My laundry bag. Cuts 2 armholes. Puts it over my head, and he goes, "There you go. Now you can join the Get Weird party." And then I went outside, and there's just 70 hippies, all wearing weird-ass different things. This felt like my initiation into living here. It really did. I felt like I was being initiated. I only lived at the Staffacom for a few months. I literally look at this time period of my life like it was my college experience. It was so wild. It really was. And we always had themed parties. We'd have at least 2 to 3 parties a week. And they always had really, really fun, crazy themes. The very first day was the day of the Get Weird party. And that's when I wore the laundry bag. I'll never forget the Shrek themed party. Yes, you heard that right, folks. We had a Shrek themed party. I was still new at Staffacom. I was trying to make friends, right? I was nervous. But then it was the night of the Shrek party, and everyone was so excited about the Shrek party. All the girls dressed up so cute. They were Shrek babies. Some people were the 3 blind mice. Everyone dressed up so cute. But your girl didn't know anybody, okay? I needed to make a bold move. I was like, you know what? Go big or go home. So what did I do? I covered myself in green acrylic paint, head to toe, and put on this fat suit. Okay, yes, you already know I would be the only person to dress up as Shrek. What do you mean? Who else is going to be Shrek? You see, the thing from this night is I actually, unfortunately, don't remember a lot of what happened. I got very intoxicated, okay? And I actually went to bed fairly early. It was probably 8 or 9 p.m. by the time I passed out. I'm still the new person, right? Not a lot of people know me. I wake up the next morning and I go outside. Every single person looks at me. They point at me. They go, whoa, oh my gosh, were you Shrek? Is that Shrek? Are you the girl that was Shrek? Instantly, I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? And I was all nervous. Like, I didn't even know anybody's name. I'm like, yeah, like, I was Shrek. Why? Why? Everyone's just crying of laughter. Okay, and I'm like, why are you guys laughing? Like, what happened last night? They're like, Kylie, you don't remember? This girl pulls out a video on her phone. And the video they had of me on their phone was me blackout drunk, Naruto running across the roof, screaming, "This is my swamp." And that was how I got my nickname. Everyone called me Shrek for a really long time. But honestly, like, fuck, that was so funny. This was, like, definitely one of the most iconic moments at Staffacom. Everybody talked about this. And yeah, that's when I became Shrek. I very much so view, like, my few months of living at this staff accommodation like it was my college experience. And during this time, I was obviously supervising at the lodge. So my nickname was Soup. Everyone would call me Soup because I was the supervisor. I would just, like, walk by and they'd be like, "Hey, Soup!" Which is so funny because I was literally 19. Like, some of the people working under me were, like, 40. But I was the supervisor, so I think that's kind of funny. Just picture this little 19-year-old Kylie freaking telling people how to housekeep, even though I literally have never housekeeped in my entire life. Like, fuck, it's so funny. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, if I can land literally any job with zero experience, like, so can you guys, right? That's why you got to master your communication skills. Because I've been so unqualified for things, but have landed every single thing I've ever applied for, simply just because I know how to communicate and show my personality. And that shit really matters and shines in interviews. Like, if you can show your personality, boom, you land the job instantly. I've been self-employed since I was 16, and I kind of knew that I wouldn't be able to work for somebody for probably more than 3 months. I knew that 3 months is kind of like, okay, I can't do this. I don't know. I personally really can't deal with people telling me what to do. And since I was the supervisor, like, it wasn't too bad because I was mostly in charge. So it worked out. However, a few months into living on the island, which was so much fun, right? Because obviously living with a bunch of surf bums, it was literally like college. But instead of going to school and learning, we would go to work and make money. So it was kind of cool. We would all go to work together. We'd work at the lodge, and then we all came back and we lived together in a 70-person staff-a-com, which I still can't get over. Like, that's actually insane. So this was during the time in which history was actually being made on the island. Basically, the part of the island I was living in is one of the only rainforests in Canada, okay? And the trees here are so incredibly beautiful. Words simply cannot describe the sheer utter beauty and energy that the trees of this land hold. You know, these trees are hundreds, some of them even thousands of years old. And, like, you actually can't fathom how big these trees are. Like, it is insane. And I'll never forget the very, very first time I drove across the country to the island. Because when I drove through the village for the first time, I was bawling my eyes out, just sobbing in tears, simply because of how beautiful these trees are. These trees are so magical. The energy that radiates off of these trees is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my lifetime so far. Like, I could literally cry just going on a walk through the rainforest because of the energy and how magnetically beautiful these trees are. This was during the point of time where obviously the politicians were on the news saying, "Oh, these old growth trees are sacred to our land. We are not cutting them down. We would never do that." So that was what was being shared and spread on the news, whereas in reality, they were chopping down all of these trees left, right, and center. A lot of the people in the village were hippies. These people are die-hard nature lovers. So what did they do? A lot of my friends would spend their weekends at Fairy Creek. Some people would literally chain themselves onto the trees, trying to stop the construction workers from tearing down all of these 1,000-year-old trees. And might I add, these are some of the only old growth trees in Canada, and they're just chopping them down acres and acres and acres. Like, I'm literally getting shivers in my whole body just thinking about it. They were literally on the news saying, "Oh, we're not chopping them down. Every single weekend, all my friends would go to Fairy Creek, and hundreds of people would go to defend these trees. The protests were going great. So many people were showing up. They actually had camps set up for people to camp out. Like, the protest was going amazing until the police force kind of started pushing back. The police knew that a lot of these people were hippies, right? So what they would do is they would arrest people and put them in the back of their cop car, and then the cops would literally just drive out into the middle of nowhere and just let them go. The police were doing just so much shit like this. So all the hippies were obviously rebelling. We're not going to stand for planet Earth, Mother Gaia, just be destroyed in front of our eyes. Absolutely not. So all the hippies rebelled, right? All the hippies tied themselves up to the trees, chained themselves, and it was crazy. It was a crazy moment of history. It really was. Over months and months of the protest going on, the police started to get really, really hostile. They were not having it. They did not care about the trees. They didn't care about the hippies. A lot of my friends were actually getting hurt. They were getting violent. People were getting arrested. It was crazy. One of my close friends went out for the weekend to go protest, like he did every single weekend this whole summer. The problem with this time is he didn't come back. So one of my friends was missing, and he didn't come back. And I was so nervous. I was so anxious. And it was like the end of the day. I had nothing to do at work. Literally nothing. It was almost the end of the day. And I was panicking, right? I was having a panic attack. I started getting really nervous. There was a mystery, okay? Inspector Gadget needed to come out, okay? Something needed to be solved. So I was instantly like, okay, Kim Possible, my friend's missing. Like, we got to go on a mission. So obviously I'm nervous and panicking, and I need to like find out where my friend is. I remember asking my boss that day because there was nothing to do. It was the very end of the day. And it was 1 hour before I was supposed to get off work. And I asked her if I could leave early. 60 minutes. 1 hour before I was supposed to finish. That's it. And she didn't let me. Obviously, Kylie doesn't do power hungry. Okay, Kylie doesn't do power hungry people. I don't need this. Okay, I'm only here because I want to live on this village. Like, that's literally the only reason I was working there. So I was like, oh, you want to be power hungry with me? You think I need this? Hell no. So I quit. Me and power hungry people don't mix, okay? Especially in a workplace. So I was like, I don't need this. Okay, so I quit. My friend ended up being totally fine. He came back like a day later. So obviously when I quit the job, I no longer had a place to live. And this is when van life enters the picture. You see, I've always wanted to do van life. I remember even back in high school, like just falling asleep, I used to watch like van life vlogs, build tutorials. I had van life on my bucket list prior to, so I honestly was not worried when everything fell apart with my job because I just knew that that meant there was a new opportunity waiting around the corner for me, and that's exactly what van life was. So right when I quit my job was also right when Brayden and Matt quit their job. And this is when we were like, you know what? Fuck it. This is when Brayden and I got the van. The 1974 van that literally barely started. This is when we got her. Her name's Daryl, by the way, if you're wondering. The big blue van. Daryl. I don't know. I just felt like it was fitting. Yeah, it barely started. But I mean, it had like a kitchen setup already in it. And when we first got the van, it literally looked like a 90s diner. Like, it was kind of ugly. I already knew all the like ideas I had for the renovation and what we could make it look like. But yeah, so basically me and Brayden demolished the whole van. We emptied out the entire inside. And then that is the time when I quit my job, which wasn't planned, right? Because we were hoping to maybe build the van first. There was a point when it was literally just metal on the floor, and Brayden and I slept on it. So it was very uncomfortable for the first little while. But don't forget the formula, right? Discomfort equals growth. It's sometimes in those most uncomfortable moments of your life where you really grow the most as a human. And that was van life for me. It was very uncomfortable at the beginning. We parked the van at night in the middle of the rainforest on this old abandoned logging road. This freaking logging road was like such a fever dream. It really is. There were so many hippies that lived out of their van on this road. One of the first nights camping out in the van, we went to the abandoned logging road, And there's so many like tiny little roads that like went off of this main road. We would just kind of go down random paths and find like a spot to camp out for the night. So many hippies lived in this rainforest. Like I remember one time we were literally just like walking. We're like, let's check out this road. You just walk down it and there's like a crazy camp setup. Some of these people had the most insane tenting and camp setups that I've ever seen. We came across this one guy in a tent once. He came out, he's a hippie, right? He has no shoes on, barefoot, big ass beard. And I was talking to him and I was like, so how long have you been living here? I actually just came out here to visit for the weekend. And that was like 15 years ago. All of them just came to visit and then they never left. And that was like the story for most of these people. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of cool, happy-go-lucky, amazing, free-spirited hippies. But there can also, sometimes be a few crazy ones. And I remember one night we set up a camp in the rainforest to go to bed like we did every night. Imagine you're in the middle of a rainforest. You're looking left, right, up, down, side. All you see is trees and rainforest. You think you're in the middle of nowhere. All of a sudden, this bright yellow truck with like crazy stuff painted all over it just like emerges from the bushes, driving through, like off-roading. I'm like, whoa, where did you come from? There's like this hippie. So I'm like, hi, like nice to meet you. And he was telling me how his camp is like set up a few hundred meters back. And this man told me that he's been living here for over 10 years. Some of the people in this rainforest literally have been living there for decades. They just like set up camp and they like have been living there off the land like ever since. And I don't know why. I just have so much appreciation for those kinds of people. I just think that's so sick. Anyway, so this guy's obviously been here a really long time. So he's giving me some advice. I'm new to the van life community. I'm a new hippie. He's trying to help me out. So the man pulls up beside me in his bright yellow truck. Instantly, I'm just like, oh, nice whip. I like how you decorated your truck. Because there's like a bunch of cool paintings and like artwork on the side of it. Because a lot of people did that, right? They'd have like super retro old cars, old vans, and then they would paint it their own and make it unique. People there were so cool. A lot of people also lived out of school buses there. They would convert school buses. Those were really cool to look at. And it was so fun just like seeing how people like converted their home on wheels, and everyone kind of did it differently. And I don't know, it was a really fun little community to be a part of. So the guy talks to me, he rolls down his window and he goes, you gotta watch out for the bears. They'll try to break in. They'll steal anything you got. And then he drove off. And I started laughing. I don't know, I kind of just thought this guy was joking. I was like, yeah, we're living in the rainforest. Yeah, like look out for the bears. Didn't really think anything of it. The next day, I woke up because I also had my car, right? We slept in the van, and then parked beside the van was my car where we would store like a bunch of our stuff in. The next morning when I woke up, there was paw prints and scratch marks all over the front of my car. Me and Braden just started laughing because he was being dead serious about the bears. Like, I don't know why. I thought he was joking, but he was being dead serious. What happened is I left an empty box of pizza on my windshield. And the bear literally tried to get it. Giant bear prints all over my car. Claw marks on the windshield. It was wild. I have some wild van life stories. I really do. And that was one of them. It was also so cool, right? Because all my friends at the time were also homeless. So they all just lived out of their cars. What we would do every single night is we would go set up camp at a different spot in the rainforest. We'd all sleep out the night, have a sleepover. We'd wake up. The very first thing we do is we'd head over to the beach and we'd stay parked there. And we would surf the entire day. We'd surf all day, and then we went back at night, and we repeated this, and we literally lived like this for months and months. Also, my favorite beach we went to, they filmed like parts of Twilight there, so every single time I was surfing on this beach, I'm like, oh my god, I'm in Twilight! It was just such a vibe. Living with a bunch of hippies was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Almost all of them have escaped the Matrix, okay? The way they see the world, their perspectives, like just being able to pick the brains of these kinds of people, I learned so much. I learned so much, not only about myself, but about the world and how everything works, and really just the truth of a lot of things. There were so many cool little fun things about this village. If you parked at the beach and you didn't pay for parking, you'd obviously get a beach like parking ticket. There was only 1,000 people that lived here, right? And the majority of the population is hippies. So the people there are they're all born to rebel. Nobody who actually lived there would buy the beach parking tickets. What they would do is they would take wax from their surfboard and they would shove it into the machines whenever they would put up a parking ticket machine, and they would break the machine from just shoving a bunch of surf wax inside of it. And at the ice cream shop in town, if you brought in your unpaid beach parking ticket, they gave you like 15% off ice cream. Living with like hippies was just the coolest thing ever. It really was. When we would go to the beach in the morning and park out for the whole day, I would go and surf. I'd get exhausted, and my favorite thing to experience is just having a nap in the parking lot in the van. It was my favorite thing. By the ocean, just taking a nap, having the sunbeam on my face, just knowing I'm about to go surf when I wake up. What living like a hippie did is it romanticized the simple things in life. And I think that reset really changed my perspective on everything. I also detached from social media when living here. I was barely ever on my phone. I kind of got lazy with posting, but I also needed that. Like, I needed that reset. I just fell in love with all the simple things in life and all the little things, and that really provided me with a lot of joy. Another thing that comes with van life is just having a bunch of crazy stories. This period of my life was chaos, and a lot of crazy things happened, and I'm going to just share with you guys one of the many, many stories that occurred while living in the van. Basically, the way this village works is it's in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, the closest McDonald's and Walmart was like a 3-hour drive. So the little village we lived in, the closest town was about like 40 minutes. Okay, so in between those two places, there was literally just a 2-lane highway, okay, a 2-lane road for 40 minutes connecting those two places. So there really was only one way in and one way out of this place. So one day, me, Matt, and Braden were going back to the rainforest to camp out for the night, right? The drive takes about like 30 minutes. We were driving on the highway, and then boom, we came to a complete stop. And there was like, for as far as the eyes could see, there was like cars just backed up, and we were at a complete stop. So obviously we were a little nervous because the van's super old. It would only sometimes start and sometimes stop. So like the idea of just it like idling and sitting in traffic is a little scary. So about 20 minutes go by and we still don't move. And this is when Braden turns off the van. So Braden was in the middle in the van. Okay, so I was in the back in my car behind the van. Matt was in his car in front of the van. So it was us just kind of in a row. So after 20 minutes, we decided to turn off the van because it was like kind of starting to overheat. At this point, we discovered that unfortunately there was a really bad accident, and that was what all the traffic was. It was probably about like an hour later, a bunch of people just started doing like 3-point turns and like going back to town because they were trying to go to the other town, but it's been hours and like there was literally no movement. So people were like, okay, I'm just going to go back to town for the night. So a lot of people were like turning around, and we were like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's do that. That's a great idea. We should do that, right? Wrong. I'll never forget this moment. Oh my gosh. Remember, folks, 2-lane road. And it's just a tiny little 2-lane road, okay? So, okay, yeah, let's go back in town for the night. So what do we need to do to turn around to go back to town? Well, we needed to do a 3-point turn. Yeah, turns on good, right? You go sideways. So at this point, he did the first part of the turn, right? So we are horizontal. We are currently covering both lanes of the road horizontally, about to reverse to do the last step to go back to town. Braden switches gears, puts it out of forward, puts it into reverse, and boom. The van died. The van died mid 3-point turn. Okay, so we are horizontal across this highway. We're freaking out. Oh my God, we're blocking off the road. At this point, it was like literally like an hour or two in. Like the cars still haven't moved. So we were like, oh, fuck. We still got a bit of time to fix this, but, like, we're horizontal across the highway, and the van's not starting. This obviously was not an ideal time for the van to break down on us. And so what did we do? Well, Kylie put her Crocs in sport mode. I strapped up the ankle. Matt was barefoot. He didn't even have shoes on at the time, okay? We were living like hippies. He didn't have shoes. So you got Matt barefoot. You got 5'3", 120-pound Kylie with Crocs in sport mode at the back of this van. You got me and Matt just putting our entire body weight into this, moving this 1,000-pound van out of the way. Obviously, I'm a tiny little girl, but I'm strong, okay? Don't let the height fool you, baby girl, okay? I'm strong and mighty. These little chicken legs got strength to her. So after about 10, 15 minutes, Matt and I actually managed to push the van back. We were so excited. Oh my gosh, thank God it's no longer horizontal across the highway. But then we're like, okay, now what? Now what? We're still waiting. Another like 30 minutes go by and the traffic, it still hasn't cleared up. Apparently the accident was really bad and the entire road is just going to be blocked off. So at this point, we're like, okay, well, fuck it. We're just going to go back into town and sleep there for the night, whatever. We're like, okay, well, we're going to have to do the 3-point turn again, right? And this time actually leave. So Braden goes again to do the 3-point turn. The first half goes great. And once again, when he starts to put the van in reverse and he goes horizontally across the entire road, the van breaks down. It broke down. So picture this. You got 2-lane road. You got this giant blue van horizontally blocking off both lanes of the road. Braden's trying to start the car. It just wouldn't start for the life of us. No matter how many times we tried, how long we waited, the van wouldn't start. At this point, it was pitch black. Okay, it is nighttime. So much time has passed. And then our biggest nightmare happened. The road opened up. Hundreds of meters in the distance, on the other side of the road, all you see is a cop car. And behind him, there was hundreds of cars waiting to get into town that have been, finally the highway's opening and they're just coming towards us. Braden is having a full-blown panic attack, okay? He is freaking out. He's like, what the fuck do we do? The car's not starting, the van. Matt's tapped out. Matt's pissed off. Matt's in his own world. He's kind of just sitting in his car like, yeah, like, you shouldn't have bought the van. It's a piece of shit. Like, Braden's freaking out. Like, what do we do? The cop car is slowly approaching us, like, with the lights on. We were around the corner, right? And it was dark, so I was hoping they could even see us. I run around the corner. I put my hand out, waving my hands for them to stop. The cop rolls down his window. He comes up to me. He goes, you need to move the van! The highway's opening now! And I go, yeah. So about that. This cop was so rude. He did not care what I had to say. You need to move this van! The highway is opening now! Like, he was so aggressive. And I was like, sir, you don't understand. Like, our car just broke down. We've been trying to move it. This police officer is pissed. He takes his flashlight. He fucking runs over, okay? Puts the flashlight right in Braden's face. And he goes, turn on the van right now! Braden's shaking. He's shitting himself. He's fucking terrified. He puts the keys in ignition. He turns it. Beads of sweat just dripping down Braden's face. He goes to start the car again. So at this point, I started getting worried. So what did I do? I remember taking a step back and I spoke to my spirit guides, the universe, God, ancestors, whatever higher power you believe in. I was like, okay, guys, if there was any moment of time that we needed this van to start, it would be right now. And I visualized the van starting in my mind. Super, super clearly, I visualized the van starting. And then the third try comes along. This van needs to turn on! And then Braden's like, what do you think we've been trying to do the past 2 hours? By the time the third time came around, all the cars started coming towards us, a few hundred meters away from us, okay? They were so close to us. And right when he turned the key the third time, The car started. The fucking van started. And he drove off. The van starts, okay? Brayden drives off. Matt follows him. I get back into my car. Everybody's cheering. Everyone's like screaming and clapping and cheering and just so excited, right? Because we were literally the live entertainment for these few hours. And that was the grand finale, okay? That was the season finale. That was the show. And right when Brayden drove off, I just looked the cop in the face. I gave him the biggest finger. And I said, fuck you. I think that was one of my favorite story times of the van, just because it was so chaotic. You guys don't understand, like, right when Brayden drove off was, like, right when all the hundreds of people on the highway, like, connected to him. Like, the timing was just so perfect. Like, the van literally broke down in the middle of the highway and was blocking off traffic, but happened to just fix itself in the matter of seconds it needed to. And, oh, it was just perfect timing, and it was one of my favorite stories about van life. The biggest teacher I had when I lived on the island was most certainly the ocean. Surfing is one of my favorite hobbies to do. I feel like surfing is almost its own form of meditation in itself. I don't know, there's something about surfing, it really grounds and brings me to the present moment. I can't even explain to you guys the high of surfing and like what it feels like to catch a wave and surf it all the way down the beach. Like, there is no better feeling in this world. And the ocean is such a humbling teacher because, you know, surfing is an extreme sport. I actually got stitches in my face from surfing. I got a fucking kooks board in my face once. And yeah, I got like a few stitches right under my lip. But it healed up beautifully. You can't even see it, so that's good. But yeah, the ocean is definitely one of my biggest teachers. From surfing, you can go from feeling such a high, just having the wave of your life, to be like put inside of the washing machine. Basically what this means is when a wave is like super big and like crashes down, like that tip pulls you under and you get sucked under the rip current and you like literally get thrown around like you're in a washing machine and you don't know how long it's going to be until you come up. And sometimes it's like you're really, really close to death because you can't breathe, but then you like catch that breath of air and then it all makes it worth it. Like, surfing is a dangerous sport. But I think that's why I love it so much, is because I'm such an adrenaline junkie. And when you catch a good wave and you ride that baby down the beach at sunset, let me tell you, there is no other high like that on earth. And that's why hippies are such happy people, right? Is 'cause they all surf all day. You can't surf all day and be mad. Like, it's impossible to surf all day and be a miserable person. You really can't. And the ocean itself is just so healing. So spending the majority of my days, like, literally just in the ocean, oh, it rejuvenated and healed me on a cellular and soul level. I highly, 10 out of 10, recommend experiencing the nomad life. Living like a hippie just gave me an entirely different perspective on the world. And I almost felt like I was reborn. I feel like when I lived on the island, like, it rebirthed me. When I first went onto the island, I was a caterpillar. And when I left, I was a butterfly. That's also when I got my butterfly tattoo. Right? Because change can be uncomfortable. Think about a caterpillar going through metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is an uncomfortable process to go through. But it's in that discomfort in life where you truly grow the most. Living like a hippie just offered me such a different perspective on my life. And I think perspective is so important because being able to live your life in different perspectives, I feel like, really expands your consciousness. This was also one of the first times in my life kind of slowing down and just disconnecting and unplugging from social media too, for like the first time in my life. And when I got lost in nature, I feel like is when I found myself. And that's really beautiful. It was also just so healing to live there. Like, the girls would be like, hey, do you want to go to the beach and paint, and then after go surfing, and then go out for dinner, and then we'll go for a skateboard at sunset? I'm like, yes! Versus in Ontario, it's like, do you want to go out to the club and drink poison and do the same thing every single weekend that we've been doing for years? Like, it was just so nice to not have that. Another thing I learned when living on the island is just the illusion of time. Because it is an illusion, right? We've created this whole idea on how we think time works, but it doesn't work at all the way we think it does. For example, you start thinking about the past, okay? You get sad, okay? You get sad when you think about the past. That's depression. You're worried about the future, okay? You're anxious about the future. That's anxiety. The only place where you're free of these two things is in the present moment. And that's why living in it is so beautiful, right? It's a gift. That's why it's called the present. And the present moment, in my personal opinion, is the only moment in which time is real. I think being able to live in the present moment for such an extended period of time helped me to not only A, heal myself, but B, unlock myself. You know, the energy of this land that I lived on was so magical. That was actually my first time ever channeling energy, was when I lived on the island. Being able to tap into the energy of the land and the ancient ancestors that once walked on it was really cool. If you guys want to hear about my first time ever channeling and what I channeled, I believe it's episode 9 where I get into the details of that. So stay tuned. At the end of the summer, unfortunately, the van engine exploded, and that put the end to van life. If you guys enjoyed today's episode and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, I would appreciate it so much if you could rate me 5 stars. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. Peace!